Once upon a time, after 12 long years working abroad as a nurse, Ophelia was finally coming home. Every night for the past year, she had counted down the days, imagining the moment she would wrap her arms around her daughter again, the little girl she had left in her auntie's care so she could build a better life for them both. But nothing could have prepared her for what she was about to find. Let's go back. 16 years ago. Congratulations, Mr. Thompson. Your wife just delivered a beautiful baby girl. Thompson threw his hands in the air, laughing as he danced in the hallway of his office. Hey, God is good. My Ophelia did it. Overcome with joy, he ended the call, jumped into his car, and sped off toward the hospital, tears blurring his vision as he imagined holding his baby for the first time. But joy, as life often reminds us, can be painfully short-lived. Just 2 blocks away from the hospital, a speeding truck ran a red light. Back in the hospital room, Ophelia stared. Weak and dazed from the delivery, her eyes fluttered open, scanning the room for the man whose voice had always made her feel safe. But Thompson wasn't there. She sat up slowly, her body aching, her newborn cradled gently in her arms. A nurse stepped into the room, her expression tight, hesitant. We tried to reach your husband, she began softly. There was an accident. I'm so sorry. At first, Ophelia blinked, not quite processing the words. Then, like a floodgate breaking, the reality hit. No, 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 please God, not today. Her cry echoed through the sterile hospital walls as she wailed, inconsolable. That day, Ophelia became both a mother and a widow. They buried Thompson with drums, dirges, and dust, but not with the woman who loved him. Ophelia stood far from the funeral grounds, heart aching with a grief too heavy for words. She was not allowed to mourn him. No black cloth, no solemn seat, not even a final glance at his face. His family had barred her from the ceremony, calling her a witch, and Ophelia, being an orphan, had no one to plead on her behalf. She watched from a distance, her arms wrapped tightly around their baby as the casket lowered into the earth. Her tears were silent, but her soul screamed. Later that evening, the compound swelled with unrest. The baby cried in the midst of the chaos. She killed him, Thompson's mother screamed, her voice cracking like thunder. That cursed woman took my son. Mama, please, Thompson's younger sister begged, holding back tears. It wasn't her fault. It was an accident. Thompson wouldn't want us to treat his wife and daughter this way. He loved her. But the old woman wouldn't listen. Her eyes blazed with rage and pain, her hands trembling from a grief she had to take out on another. Ophelia, clutching her baby to her chest, fell to her knees in the dirt. Please, please let me feed her, she whispered. My breasts are full, she hasn't eaten. Please, Mama, she's just a baby. That demon you call a baby deserves to starve. Thompson's mother spat with so much venom that even the other family members who were supporting her gasped in shock. There was no mercy for Ophelia and her daughter. That night, they made her sleep outside on the veranda, her back against the cold wall, the baby curled beside her. No blanket, no words of comfort, just the biting night wind and the angry mosquitoes who feasted on them. Just as the baby finally quieted down and Ophelia dozed off, she felt it. A sudden icy splash snapped her awake. She gasped, soaked and shivering. Standing over her was Thompson's mother, a bucket dangling in her hands, eyes wild. Out of my son's house, she screamed. You think you can curse us and stay here? You and that evil child must leave. You've brought death to this family. The baby wailed, louder this time, as if she knew, as if she understood the danger she was in. That thing must be used to appease the gods, the old woman roared, pointing at the baby, flanked by 2 heavily built men Ophelia didn't recognize. Their faces were stone, unmoved by her cries. We don't want you or that death child here. They seized her. One dragged her by the arm. The other snatched the baby from her chest. No, no, please, don't take her. Don't take my daughter, Ophelia screamed, thrashing, begging. Her voice cracked. her nails dug into the earth, but Auntie Amara only spat at her feet. That child should never have lived after taking my only son. And just like that, her baby was snatched away from her, and Ophelia was thrown out of the house she and her husband had built in the middle of the night. That night, the sky wept with her. Rain pelted the ground in angry sheets as Ophelia sat curled by the gate, soaked to the bone, shivering in silence. She had no more tears left to cry. Her body was numb, part from the cold, but mostly from the ache that had settled deep in her chest. She stared blankly into the night, her arms wrapped tightly around herself. Just a week ago, she had given birth. She had been someone's wife, someone's joy. But now she was nothing more than a ghost at her own life's funeral. Then, a whisper broke through the sound of the rain. "Madam, come with me." She turned slowly. It was Joe, the night security man. He was drenched, holding a towel in his hands. His eyes flicked nervously over his shoulder. "I saw what they did. I know where they kept the baby." Her breath caught in her throat. Wordlessly, she took the towel, pressing it against her soaked shoulders, but her feet were already moving. Joe led the way, quiet as the wind, careful not to draw attention. They tiptoed through the side entrance of the house. At the far end of the compound, on the veranda, they found her, Ophelia's baby girl, alone, curled up in rags, her tiny face stained with dried tears. She had cried herself to sleep on the cold cement floor. Ophelia dropped to her knees, her breath trembling. Her hands hovered over the child before scooping her into her arms with a softness that only a mother's grief could carry. "Thompson," she whispered into the night, "see what they're doing to your princess." Her tears returned, not loud, not fierce, but quiet and steady, falling onto her child's face like baptism. "You have to run," Joe whispered, his voice urgent now. "Far. Don't look back. I heard them. They're taking the baby to the shrine at first light. They want to sacrifice her, to appease the gods. I couldn't let that happen. You and Master Thompson were always kind to me." His voice cracked. "Please go now, before they wake up." Ophelia didn't hesitate. She clutched her daughter close to her chest, whispered a shaky, tear-choked, "Thank you," and ran into the night, into the storm, with nothing but the weight of her child in her arms and the will to survive. She didn't know where she was going. She didn't know who would help her. But one thing was clear. She had been cast out like a curse, but she would raise this child like a miracle. Before the storm passed, Ophelia had found shelter with a neighbor, kind and quiet, who had taken her in for the night, no questions asked. She gave her a warm blanket, a bowl of hot porridge, and a corner of the room where she could lie down with her baby. It wasn't much, but it was enough. At the first croak of the rooster, Ophelia was already awake. The sky was still dark at the edges, but the new day had begun, and she had made up her mind. She wrapped the baby tight to her chest and rose quietly. "Where are you going?" the neighbor asked, peeking through the curtain. "Anywhere but here," Ophelia replied softly, her voice steady. "I need to start again, for Faith." That was her name now, Faith, because Ophelia knew she would need mountains of it to raise this child, with nothing but her 2 hands and prayers. They traveled to Techiman, a town far enough to be new, but familiar enough to offer hope. The next few years were a test of everything she was made of. Ophelia had never practiced with her nursing degree. Just months after graduation, she had married Thompson, and the plan was simple. She would be a stay-at-home mother. They had planned a life of love, laughter, and family. But life had unraveled all that in a single day. Now, desperate measures became survival. She knocked on clinic doors until one opened. The pay was meager, the hours long, but it was a beginning. With each shift she worked, each patient she helped, Ophelia rediscovered the strength her grief had buried. Her mother had always said, with the right education, you can always begin again. And so she did. They lived in a tiny one-room house on the edge of town. The roof leaked in the rain, and the windows let in more dust than air, but it was warm with love. She made sure Faith, who was now 4 years old, had food on her plate, a clean dress to wear, and songs to fall asleep to. Some nights, Ophelia would sit beside her daughter's bed, watching her breathe, listening to the small soft hum of safety. It made the exhaustion worth it. But then came the letter. One evening, after Faith had drifted off to sleep, Ophelia sat by the flickering lantern, a paper trembling in her hand. It was from a nursing agency in the UK. They were offering her a job. The pay was beyond anything she could earn here. Enough to send money home, build a proper house, give Faith an education, a future. But it meant leaving. For a long time. Her eyes welled with tears. She looked at Faith's tiny form, curled up under a thin blanket. "How can I leave you, my baby?" she whispered. "But how can I give you the life you deserve if I stay?" The next morning, she visited Auntie Martha in Accra, her mother's older sister, a woman known for her discipline, her sharp tongue, and her unshakable presence. She and her husband had no children, and their home was large and quiet. "I need your help," Ophelia said, clutching the letter. "I've been offered work abroad. I want to leave Faith with you." Auntie Martha raised an eyebrow, silent for a moment. Ophelia stood her ground. "I'll send money every month. I'll do everything I can. I just need to know she'll be safe." A long sigh, a pause. Then finally, "All right, leave her with me." That afternoon, Ophelia packed everything she could. Enough food to last a month, a small bundle of money, and a handwritten note filled with Faith's likes and dislikes. When the time came to say goodbye, she held Faith tight, tears streaming freely down her cheeks. "I love you, baby. I'll come for you soon," she whispered, her voice breaking. Faith just looked up at her, eyes wide and unsure, too young to understand what was happening. She waved, slow and confused, and just like that, Ophelia turned and walked away, every step heavier than the last. She was leaving her heart behind, but she carried hope in its place. The dream of the UK had glittered in her mind like a lighthouse in the fog. But when Ophelia landed at Heathrow, cold wind slapped her face like a warning she couldn't yet interpret. It took just a few minutes for everything to fall apart. They were waiting for her, the agency. She smiled when she saw them, hopeful. She had no idea she was walking into a trap. "Give us your passport," they said. "We'll keep it safe," they said. "Your phone too." And just like that, she was no longer free. The job she was promised didn't exist. Instead, she was told she owed them £100,000 for processing fees, for visa costs, for accommodation. All lies, but what could she do? She was in a foreign country, no documents, no phone, no proof, no power. Every morning, she and the other girls were loaded into a dark van like livestock. No one spoke on those rides. They just stared ahead, hollowed out, silenced. 12-hour shifts in the care homes, lifting patients, scrubbing bodies, washing soiled sheets. Then straight to the night cleaning gigs, wiping down bathrooms in office buildings, scrubbing corridors until her fingers bled. She was paid £5,000 a month, but she never saw it. The agency took it all, save for a measly £400. From that, she sent £350 home every month, without fail. What she had left, £50, barely fed her. She learned to go days on black tea and dry toast. She lost weight, her cheeks hollowed, her eyes dimmed, but she told herself it was worth it. This was for Faith. Every scrubbed floor, every missed meal, every sleepless night, it was all for her little girl. Sometimes, Ophelia snuck out to a dusty old payphone 2 blocks away, watching over her shoulder the whole time. If the agency found out, the consequences would be brutal. "Thank you, my daughter. We received the money," Auntie Martha would say each time. "She is doing well. Let me speak to her," Ophelia would plead. There was always a pause, then a shy voice. "Hi, Ma." How are you? I'm fine. And then silence, followed by an excuse to leave. It stung, but Ophelia told herself it was just the distance, the years, the unfamiliarity. She's just growing. She doesn't remember me like she used to. Still, each call left her colder than the last, like a hug that never reached her. She wanted to leave the agency, wanted to report them, wanted to scream, but who would listen to her? This wasn't her land. This wasn't her system. And what if they deported her? What would happen to Faith? Where would she even begin again? So she swallowed her pride, her pain, her hunger, her helplessness, and kept scrubbing, kept working, kept surviving, because for Ophelia, survival was an act of love. 10 years, 10 winters, 10 summers, 10 years of backbreaking work, silent tears, and invisible bruises passed. Ophelia had become a ghost of the woman who once held her baby under the starlit Ghanaian sky and whispered promises of a better life. Her back ached more now. Her voice was softer. Her reflection, almost unrecognizable. She moved through her days on autopilot, her eyes tired but determined, always determined, and still, the debt never seemed to end. Every time she asked, the agency pulled out some new bogus deduction, tax increase, housing maintenance, uniform fees. The numbers never added up, and maybe they were never meant to. The only light in her day was Miss Margaret, a patient at the nursing home. An old soul with sharp eyes and a wicked sense of humor, Margaret had once been a military nurse. She told stories, long winding tales of war zones and stubborn generals, and the joy of saving lives. Ophelia listened like a child in front of a fire. For a few minutes each day, she forgot the chains, the lies, the hunger. She remembered what she had once dreamed of being. And then, one rainy afternoon, as they sat in Margaret's sunroom sipping warm tea, the question came softly, "Do you have any children, dear?" The word shattered something in Ophelia. She didn't mean to cry, but the dam broke. The years poured out all at once. She told Margaret everything, from Thompson's death, to the night she ran with her baby, to sleeping on a stranger's floor in Techiman, to the scam that brought her to the UK. She spoke of Faith, her daughter, her everything, and how she hadn't seen her in a decade. When she finished, there was silence. Margaret reached over and held her hand. "That's enough, child," she said, her voice trembling. "You've suffered enough." The next day, Margaret made a call. Her son, Mark, was the head of a powerful NGO that worked with human trafficking victims. When he heard Ophelia's story, he didn't hesitate. "We've been tracking this agency for years," he said, "but we never had anyone brave enough to speak. Now they did." With Ophelia's help, the web began to unravel. Testimonies, documents, secret footage, everything they needed to bring the criminals down. In just a few months, the agency was shut down, its founders arrested, the women freed. For the first time in 10 years, Ophelia walked out into the morning sun without fear, without chains, without debt. She was free. In recognition of her courage and cooperation, the UK government granted her full citizenship. Mark and his team helped with everything: paperwork, housing, a legal job at a reputable hospital. The nightmare was over, but the journey was far from done. One quiet Saturday morning, as she helped Margaret arrange her tea tray, the old woman looked at her thoughtfully. "So what now, my dear? What happens after the storm?" Ophelia looked out the window, where spring was blooming in soft green. "I work for 2 more years," she said. "I save, I plan, and then I go home." "To Ghana?" She nodded. Her voice grew soft, steady. "I go home to surprise my daughter, to bring her back here with me. It's time." 2 years had passed, just like that. Time, once cruel, now felt like it had flown on wings. Ophelia had worked tirelessly, every shift, every night, every extra hour stitched together with the hope of one thing: faith. For every saved pound, she would go on her knees in prayer, always repeating the same words: Lord, help us, for faith, for home, for us, amen. And now the time had come. Ophelia hugged Miss Margaret tightly. The old woman held her for a long time. Go and get your girl, she said. She's waited long enough. The flight home felt like forever, but Ophelia barely noticed. Her heart danced the whole way. She watched Ghana's coastline break through the clouds, like a lover returning after a long war. She closed her eyes and whispered, I'm coming, baby. Mama's coming. Thank you, God, for making this day happen. By late afternoon, she was in a taxi rambling through the familiar streets of Accra. The buildings looked smaller, the air warmer, the light golden. Every turn brought back memories. The last time she was here, she had walked away with nothing. Now, she was back with everything to give. When the taxi pulled up to Auntie Martha's house, Ophelia practically leapt out. But the gate was locked, and the compound was quiet. She called out, Auntie Martha? Faith? No answer. Still smiling, she checked under the flower pot, and sure enough, the spare key was still there. She laughed to herself. Some things never change, she said. But when she opened the door, dust greeted her, dust and stale air. Her smile faded. Where are they? She whispered. She placed her bags down gently and walked toward the kitchen, her throat dry from the heat. That's when she heard it. A sound, barely there, faint, sobbing. She froze, and then it hit her. The smell, thick, sour, sharp, ammonia. She followed the stench to a door by the kitchen, the basement door. Auntie Martha has a basement, she thought. She had never known that, but the sobbing was louder now, and the smell unbearable. She knocked. Hello? Is someone there? No answer. She tried the doorknob, but it was locked. Is someone hurt? Please, talk to me. Still silence. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears. Her hands trembled as she looked around. Her eyes fell on a rusted iron rod leaning by the mop. She didn't think. She grabbed it, raised it, and crash! The door splintered open. What lay beyond that door would change everything. The smell hit her first. Then came the sight. A girl, curled up on a stained mattress, barefoot, covered in rags. Her hair was matted, her face gaunt, her belly round, pregnant. She squinted under the sudden flood of light, lifting a trembling hand to shield her face. When she saw Ophelia, she screamed, a raw feral sound. She scrambled backwards like a wounded animal, trying to disappear into the wall, as if it might swallow her whole. But Ophelia had already fallen to her knees. Her breath caught in her chest. Her world cracked. Faith? The girl blinked as though she wasn't sure she'd heard right. Her lips parted, dry, cracked, disbelieving. Mommy. That's weird. It shattered something inside Ophelia. She crawled forward, gently. She touched her daughter's face with trembling hands. Faith flinched, but didn't pull away. My God, Ophelia whispered. What did they do to you? Her baby was all bones, her skin dull, her eyes empty. Her hands were thick with calluses, her wrists bore marks. Too many to count. No child should look like this. No child should live like this. She bathed her with slow, gentle hands. She held back her sobs as she saw bruises hidden beneath layers of grime. Faith didn't speak. She only stared ahead, silent, like a shell. When Ophelia placed food in front of her, she attacked it. No chewing, just swallowing. Like survival had been her only instinct for far too long. After a while, when she was clean, fed, and tucked in a blanket, Ophelia asked, Where is Auntie Martha and Uncle Tunde? Faith's body stiffened. Her eyes welled, then darted toward the basement door. And then, voices. The sound of the gate creaking open. Footsteps. The sound of a plastic bag rustling. I thought we locked this door, Auntie Martha's voice called out. casual until it wasn't. She stepped into the kitchen and stopped cold. The bag of groceries slipped from her hands. Tomatoes rolled across the tiles. A tin of milk burst open on impact. She stared, mouth open. Ophelia stood beside Faith, her face unreadable, her posture still, too still. Auntie Martha dropped to her knees. "I'm sorry, please forgive me," she wailed. Ophelia said nothing for a long moment. Then finally her voice came, low and controlled. "How long?" Auntie Martha trembled. She was rude. She was hard to control. Auntie Martha said, "We thought we were correcting her by locking her underground." Ophelia's voice rose finally. "By making her a slave?" Faith curled into herself, arms wrapped around her knees, sobbing silently. Ophelia crouched beside her, then turned, her eyes burning. "Auntie Martha," she said slowly, "care to explain her pregnancy?" Auntie Martha's mouth twitched. Her eyes flickered away. "That daughter of yours is possessed," she muttered. She seduced your uncle. She brought this on herself." Ophelia blinked, processing. "You mean to tell me that my 16-year-old daughter seduced your 70-year-old husband?" "Yes," Auntie Martha snapped defensively. "She did. The prophet said." "The prophet?" Ophelia interrupted, voice now trembling with rage. "And what did this holy man of yours say? Lock her in the dark, starve her, beat her, cleanse her of her sins?" She took a step closer. Her fists were clenched. "And did your prophet say to also lock your husband in prison and throw away the key for being the very devil?" That's when the door creaked again, and he walked in. Uncle Tunde. He stopped mid-step, eyes wide, mouth ajar. When he saw them, saw her, he turned to bolt. But Ophelia was faster. She lunged forward, grabbed his shirt collar, and slammed him against the wall. Her strength came not from muscle, but from rage. The kind of strength that years of silence can build. "Not this time," she hissed. "We are all going to answer for what was done to my baby." Auntie Martha was on her knees now, crying louder. "Ophelia, please. We're sorry. Unhand him. He's the husband of my youth. We are family. Let's settle this like family." "Family?" Ophelia spat the word like poison. "If this is how you treat family, I shudder to think what you would do to strangers." Her voice cracked as she turned to look at Faith, who now sat in a corner, gently rocking herself, humming a lullaby to no one, eyes unfocused, a child locked inside herself. "For 12 years, Ophelia said softly, her voice breaking, "I slaved in cold cities, in silence. I starved so she would never have to. I trusted you. I honored you. I sent you every penny so she would never feel like a burden, so she would have everything." Her hands trembled as she pointed toward her daughter. "And I come back to this? A ghost of a girl, a soul half gone." The silence that followed was heavy. Ophelia called the police. They came, took statements, photographed the basement. Faith sat on the hospital bed, silent as the doctors examined her. The verdict was quiet, clinical, devastating. She's 16, her body is tired, but the baby is alive. Ophelia didn't leave her side, not once. She held her through the blood tests, through the trauma assessments, through the nights when Faith woke up screaming, her body soaked in sweat. "I left," Ophelia whispered, brushing her daughter's hair. "I left to give you a better life, and they broke you. God, see my daughter through this difficult time. Come through for us," Faith cried. Not loud sobs, just quiet, continuous tears that soaked Ophelia's blouse. "I thought you forgot me," she whispered. "I waited every birthday, but they said, you didn't want me." Faith's words broke Ophelia. She wrapped her arms around her daughter, and they wept. For all the birthdays stolen, all the hugs never given, all the pain too great for words. They stayed like that for hours. In court, Auntie Martha stood trembling. Uncle Tunde said nothing, eyes dark, face blank, but justice spoke where silence could not. 15 years for her, 30 for him. The judge's gavel came down with a sound that felt like thunder in Ophelia's chest. They left Ghana quietly. No fanfare, no goodbyes. Faith gave birth months later. In a quiet hospital room in London, it was a boy. Ophelia held him first, then placed him gently in her daughter's arms. "You don't have to keep him," she said softly. "If it's too much, if he reminds you." But Faith shook her head, tears already sliding down her cheeks. "No, Mummy, I don't want to give him away. He's not a reminder of what I went through. He's proof I survived. A reminder that there's always light at the end of the tunnel." She looked down at the tiny boy in her arms and smiled. "I choose to see the positive. No one gets left behind. Not anymore." She named him Thompson, "for the man I never met, but who gave me life," she said, holding her son to her chest. The healing was slow. Ophelia began counseling and Faith received therapy. Some days were harder than others. Some nights the dream still came, but they faced it together. On her 18th birthday, Faith stood on stage at a youth empowerment event. Dressed in a white dress, radiant, brave. Her voice was steady, clear. "This is for every girl left behind," she said. "Every mother forced to choose between survival and family. Every child who thought love had forgotten them. We deserve better." The room wept, and when her speech ended, she walked off stage straight into her mother's arms. The pain wasn't gone, but they were no longer prisoners to it. They were free, and finally, together. The moral of the story is that sometimes, in pursuit of a better life for our loved ones, we leave behind the very people we're trying to save. Ophelia gave her life to secure her daughter's future, but trusted the wrong hands to care for what mattered most. Let this be a reminder. Money can rebuild walls, but it can't heal wounds left by neglect, betrayal, or silence. Check in on your children. No dream is worth chasing if it means losing them in the process. Hi fam, click the link on the right to dive into yet another captivating tale. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button. Until next time, it's bye from us at Apenthene African Stories.